Colin Powell once said, "There are no secrets to success. It's the result of preparation, hard work, and learning from failure." And we couldn't agree more. This is Unleash the Champ Leadership Podcast. Unleash the Champ Leadership Podcast. We'll talk to people from all walks of life and pick their brains about their journey, the process, and the ups and downs to becoming successful. You want inspiration and motivation? It all starts here. This is the Unleash the Champ Leadership Podcast. And now your host, Kyle Sullivan.
What's going on, champions? Welcome to another episode of Unleash the Champ Leadership Podcast. Our guest today has a quote that she loves. "You can't shoot at a moving target." Susan Murphy, been in the broadcast industry for over 40 years. She's been a radio news director, a TV news reporter, a weather girl back when they called them that, a talk show host, a producer for radio, a public television producer, an on-air personality, a college dean, instructor, a voiceover artist, and now a broadcast voice coach. So she's done a little bit of all, but under the umbrella of speaking, broadcasting, and we're excited to have you on the show today. Susan Murphy, thanks so much for joining us.
I just love to share my mission. I love to share the simple techniques I can give people to kind of dovetailing into what you do is to become a leader. And as you know, that has to start from within. And I'm a big believer that that leader in you is very, very closely connected to your voice, which is closely connected to breath.
Absolutely. If we could shut this thing down at 90 seconds, it'd be a powerful episode, but we'll give them a little bit more, Susan. You've had an amazing career, over 40 years in broadcast industry. Who is Susan behind the bio?
Who is Susan behind the bio? She's actually a really kind-hearted, loves children, loves dogs. I can be an absolute pit bull in a newsroom. My coaching style, I once had one of my clients, the first adjective that he used to describe me was stern. And I laughed and I actually sort of appreciated it because I can be in my coaching style. But behind this is a person who wants people to succeed, who lives to make people better. And it's a calling I came to kind of late in life. You know, when you're in the broadcast industry, it's all about you. It's, you know, your next job. It's your next gig. It's what are you going to do to get better and be better? Until I realized that I have a gift for teaching and I have a gift for encouragement, and not enough people get that encouragement. I didn't get a lot of encouragement growing up. I had parents who, they didn't stop me from what I was doing, but they didn't particularly encourage it either. I did a lot of stuff on my own growing up. And now I'm all about being a cheerleader, but sometimes being stern too.
I love that, Susan, because I've also, the funniest way someone has explained my coaching was I'm like a teddy bear with a stick of dynamite inside.
I love that.
And I'm like, I'm going to use that for the rest of my life. Thank you. And so I love that. How'd you get into broadcasting? Was it something that you saw somebody, it was, you know, like, man, I want to be like that person? Or was it, hey, this kind of just happened and I found that I'm really good at it? How did that journey start, and what made you stick and stay with it?
I got to do a radio commercial because the girl who was cast in it, we were 14 at the time, she went away to summer camp because they had delayed the recording date. So I got chosen to do the radio commercial, and I got to play a teenage shoplifter. And I realized, oh my gosh, they just paid me to speak. Oh, we can do this. So that was sort of the impetus to my career, majored in communications in college and took it from there.
That's awesome. And so you, radio news, TV reporter, weather girl, talk show host, what had you do so many different in the broadcasting industry? Like, what was it like? Okay, I like this, but I want to grow here. What was that kind of journey like?
Let's go back to that quote about you can't shoot at a moving target. Because in our business, you're only as good as your last newscast. In our business, you never sit still for too long, either because someone's going to fire you or because another opportunity will come your way. Some of the best things I ever did was look for holes in the broadcast industry or look for holes in what I was doing and then fill them. A complete guess, well, let's just take a leap of faith here and do it. And one of them was I was at public television, and public television, as you know, does pledge breaks a couple of times a year to raise money because they don't air commercials. And I had been doing that for public television in New York for a really long time. And I got this idea that maybe stations that were good at public television pledge breaks, and not all the stations are, sometimes they look a little, let's just say they don't look as beautiful or as well put together as the public television shows you're watching. So I and a producing partner decided maybe we could do turnkey pledge breaks. We would tape them. The only thing you would have to do is put your phone number on the bottom, say, call the number on your screen, support your public television station. Long story short, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting gave me $1 million to test this. And turns out it was pretty good. It didn't make more money than local pledge breaks, but when you didn't have to fire up your cameras, bring in your staff, provide snacks for them, keep the building warm, did you save money? You certainly did. So we did that back, I think it was around 1996, 97. And now it's the industry standard. I don't do it anymore, but stations who present the programs create the fundraising breaks. Stations don't have to do it on their own anymore. And that was one of the things I tried. Voice coaching for broadcasters. Another thing I thought, well, let's just hang out that shingle, see if this is a good idea. Ran it past a friend of mine who's a news director. And lo and behold, it's believing in yourself, taking that leap of faith. Now, was I in a good spot where I could take these chances? Yes. Not everybody is in that good of a spot. And I get that, so that I do understand that privilege. But the more opportunity you make for yourself, the more problems you think about solving, the more pain points you can address for people in your industry, the better you're going to be.
That's 100%. And when I think about broadcasters, they have a very very clear pitch, tone, that very like how they say things. What are some tips for non-broadcast folks to find that authentic tone, pitch?
Yep.
All of those.
Love to do this. It's actually pretty easy. And I work with about 80% women, 20% men. And it's mostly women who have trouble accessing their authentic, natural, lower pitched voices because of several reasons, not the least of which many young women hold on to girlish voices for many reasons, because that's what got them through a dysfunctional childhood. That's what got them through bullying. That's how they dealt with relationships with difficult people, usually of the male persuasion. So they've not let go of that voice, and they don't know what they're supposed to sound like as an adult. So the really simple test just to begin this is, and I do a whole lot around this, but the simple version involves doing two things. One, drop your shoulders. Let go of tension in your shoulders. That's where we all carry tension and anxiety and fear. If you can drop your shoulders and then breathe into your belly, literally take in air, kind of imagine it going all the way down to the bottom of your breastbone, which is where your diaphragm sits. That's where air is supposed to go. And from there, it goes into your lungs. Most of us breathe during the day very shallowly, it's called clavicular breathing. But when you can breathe into that belly, and you know you're doing it right because your belly swells, your diaphragm is a muscle that's cylindrically shaped. So when you fill it with air, it expands. And when you exhale the air, either or just by speaking, that muscle collapses. And that muscle needs exercise. So you bring in that air into the belly, you drop the shoulders, you want shoulders first, then you breathe. And then you begin to speak, understanding that the air and energy needs to rise from the bottom of your diaphragm. And that's how you begin it. I've been able to help lots and lots of people really access that voice to make them sound better, to make them sound more authoritative. So many anchors and reporters have this voice in their head that says, here's what you should sound like because you're on the air now. And then it becomes this false sing-song cadenced delivery that has nothing to do with authenticity or you being you. And you know what? 20, 30, 40 years ago, that kind of delivery was okay, but it's not now. It's all about storytelling. It's all about being realistic and being you, your authentic self. That's what viewers are looking to connect with. And that's what you should be connecting to your viewers with.
You said something that I wrote down, and I want to kind of go back to. A lot of our listeners here, they're leaders in companies, they're leaders in organizations, and you said that having this authentic pitch and tone and voice, it increases authority. Do you think that applies in other industries outside of being on camera, on broadcast? How would you say that does with just an audience of maybe even a team or an organization?
It applies to anyone who speaks, whether you're speaking to your children, whether you're speaking to your spouse, whether you're speaking to your boss or in front of the PTA meeting or on camera, it doesn't matter. If you can be bold and stand firm, and actually when I teach reporters, I actually have a stance for them that a singing coach taught me, but I understand it's used in sports as well, called the go stance. There is something about your being rooted and present and speaking from that belly that will make people pay attention. That's what you want them to do. Not everyone is born with a stentorial voice like James Earl Jones. We get that. But we're all born with an authentic voice, and so few of us use it. And when you learn to speak from the belly, when you learn to modify how you speak, it also does things like changes your pacing. I often will tell my anchors and reporters, I need you to be intentional and I need you to be deliberate in your speech. How many people speak a mile a minute, don't take any breaths between sentences, run out of air, and you're left with a conversation where you couldn't repeat any of that if your life depended on it. So by slowing it down, by being intentional and deliberate, you take out the ums and the uhs. You pause. Pausing, it's the best thing in the world. 2 reasons. For the speaker, it allows you to take another breath, get back into the belly, drop the shoulders, breathe from the belly. And then your thought can go into the next sentence. But you know what it's really important for is the listener. I need to absorb what you just said. If you're on air and you're delivering a new information or a breaking news or a very convoluted and complicated story, you had better be telling me deliberately about it so that take me by the hand and walk me through it, which a lot of broadcasters don't understand that really that is their job. And if you're going a mile a minute, I don't have a prayer of following you. And then it's lost. Any good speaker knows that. Pauses, you in a room full of people or in front of your spouse, a pause allows you, the speaker, also to kind of determine what your audience might be thinking. What's the expression on their face? What are they saying with their eyes? And when you pause between sentences, you'll be a lot less likely to say something you're going to regret later. I wish I had known that in some of my relationships as a younger person. We're also given to reaction.
Yeah, I feel like you explained the first time I spoke on a stage ever. I had manuscripted it out. I knew exactly what I was going to say. I had timed it. It was on time. I got in front of people, and that 20-minute talk turned into a 7-minute talk, and I got off stage.
Because
I ran out of stuff to say. Oh, Susan, I was talking like this. Here's my point 1, point 2, point 3. There was no pause. I was pacing like a lion.
And your pitch was super high.
Oh, I sounded like Donkey from Shrek.
Your pitch goes up when you get tense.
Oh man. And the guy that gave me he was like, you want to go back up there? I was like, mm-mm.
What did the audience do?
Well, they didn't know how long it was supposed to be. So thankfully, he went up and kind of like shut it down, said a little thing, and then a couple weeks later, he gave me another opportunity. He's like, I know you put in the work, and this was, 15 years ago now. He's like, I know you put in the work. I know you're just nervous. And so we do this again. But I always tell that first time on stage story of, people are like, oh, I could never do this. I'm like, sure you could. Sure you could. And if I'd have known some pauses, it might have stretched it to 11 minutes.
And then how badly did you beat yourself up over that?
I think I was just I was pretty upset with myself.
Yeah.
But I was also like, I'm glad that's over.
Well, sure, we're all
and I think I was so I was just so amped up, and it was in front of a group of students, like middle school and high school kids, and so I felt the need to like be really over the top.
Yeah.
And so it was it was funny. And I think about a lot of times, like you said, man, I wish I'd have known this then.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't, because I was in vocational ministry for a while, as I know we talked about, and it wasn't until I started primarily speaking to adults that I even worried with how I was communicating. Because when I was talking to students, it was like, how animated and how hype can I be to like keep their attention?
Right.
And that worked, because they were like, they're all over the place anyway.
Right.
But when it came to adults, I had another mentor. It was like, hey, we're going to bring this thing down. We're going to slow you down. And that was another hard piece of going, I feel I'm talking so slow. It's so quiet, and I feel awkward, and I don't like this. But then people would go, oh my gosh, that was so good. And I'm like, I feel like you're lying.
You're right, because you hear yourself differently than they do. And that's, you hear it through the bones of your head, and I hear it differently through the bones of my head. And you're right. A lot of people don't understand that if you're speaking, and see, I never use the word, I call it the S word, slow, because I'll tell you to speak slow and you will, and it sucks the energy right out of what you're doing. So that's where I use the words deliberate, intentional, emphasize. There are a million other words we could use to get you to change the pacing of how you speak. So people are afraid of that pause. They're afraid that if they're speaking too slowly, that it must be boring for the audience. When in fact, I think that deliberate pacing with proper intonation, we're not saying monotone, but the right speed with the right pauses and emphasis engages the brain. It lights it up because you can follow it, you can go along with it, you can react to it, you can respond to it. And that's what people want. They want that chance to listen and respond.
Absolutely.
And that's true in any conversation you have. And a conversation on air is between a reporter and the viewers or an anchor and the viewers. And they forget it's one-sided, but yes, it's a conversation. It's storytelling. You're telling me what happened today. You're giving me the facts of this story in a way that I can understand. And that, knowing your audience, whether it's a 4-year-old child or your 92-year-old grandmother, you have to learn to be appropriate for the people you're speaking to. If you're a doctor and you're speaking in front of other doctors, you can knock yourselves out with all that medical language and what have you, terminology. But if you're a doctor and you're speaking to donors who give money to your hospital, well, you better not be heavy on that medical terminology. You had better be heartfelt. And, they say in our business, there are only 2 kinds of stories. Ones that pull on your heartstrings, oh, doctor talking to a group of donors, and the others pull on your purse strings, oh, doctors talking to a group of donors. Heartstrings, purse strings. That's it.
I love that. And I see that to be true for sure. And so one of the things that I've had to learn how to do over time is when I have a lot of speaking engagements, how to strengthen my voice over time, how to take care of my voice. And that's been whether I'm leading a lot of team meetings, I do, podcasting, I'm speaking. I joke I get paid to run my mouth. And so there's times where I'm like, I don't have it in the tank. And so what do you advise people, your clients, the people you've worked with, yourself, on how to strengthen your voice so the fatigue doesn't happen as fast? Or when fatigue happens, how do you build it back up?
Couple of things. One, speakers need to drink way more water than everybody else. Speakers and teachers, because we're breathing in through our mouth and out through our mouth, and we're drying out our vocal cords. If you breathe in through your nose, your nasal structure automatically moistens the air so it gets past your vocal cords. There is some hydration, for lack of a better word. So we need to drink more and more water than others. And that's the only way to hydrate your vocal cords, from the inside out. Sure, having a glass of water will maybe stop a coughing attack or, moisten your lips if your nerves give you dry mouth. Well, then you should practice your speech and have a green apple before you do the speech. But that's one thing. If you use your voice a lot, you should always be sucking on a lozenge, a hard candy, something that will activate more saliva. That too coats and soothes your throat. Warm beverages, tea, the standard things, tea with honey, lemon. They say coffee dehydrates you. I'm still a big fan of coffee. You should never drink soda. That's not good for your voice. You should never eat dairy within 2 to 3 hours of your speaking engagement. That produces phlegm. So those are things you can do day of, but even leading up to, and then of course, vocal rest. There was a time I had such severe laryngitis. Remember those things we had as kids where you would write on the acetate with not quite a pencil, but a stylus, and then you would lift it up, and then that would erase what you wrote. I carried that around for a week, and I answered questions using this pad of paper thing that I could erase. Vocal rest is really very, very important. And every great speaker should have an ENT, an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Your vocal cords should be scoped just to get a baseline, to make sure that everything is well. And then if you're given to sinus infections or allergies, sleeping with a humidifier is a good idea. Again, taking those lozenges all the time. One of the things that a really simple exercise, I needed some vocal therapy after a particularly bad sinus infection and horrific laryngitis about a year and a half ago. And my doctor said, you don't really need the therapy, but you're going to think it's a lot of fun. So I went. It was great. And one of the simple things you can do to strengthen your vocal cords, play a kazoo, because it forces you to do that. It's not quite a hum and it's not quite singing, but playing a kazoo is one of the best things you can do to strengthen vocal cords. And as your vocal cords are stronger, they're less likely to break down. They're less likely to, be less open to infection. But I wonder too, in your case, Kyle, in the full body speeches that you give, you're truly exhausting all of you. So I'm wondering if some sort of yogic breathing, which is what I teach my students, and I have a kind of little secret recipe where you breathe in on 4 and you breathe out on 6. The breath work teaches you to relax muscles you don't need when you're doing something. I too have done, back in the day when fashion shows were all the rage. If I did one, I did 200. And by the end, I would be a rag. And there were some days early in my anchoring career at the end of the hour, I'd be a rag, until you learn to parcel the energy to parts of your body that need it. And don't allow all of you to go all in all the time. That's if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. So that's some healthy tips there.
Yeah, I've had to learn. I had a week that was great. Not do it again, but I had 4 events in a week where I'm giving a keynote, and I'm very expressive. And like you saying, like I'm my hands, and I got a stage, and I'm in and out and soft and slow and deliberate and faster and all of these things. And at like Saturday, we were going out with some friends, and I was like, "Hey, how y'all doing?" And I had to like go, "Oh, I'm gonna talk a whole lot less, lower," and I didn't even. It was like I ran into a brick wall.
Yep.
And because when I'm at an event or, a workshop or a training, I'm not just like on stage and then I leave. I'm on stage and I'm talking to people. I'm talking, and so I'm just on for like 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
And but it was the funniest thing a couple months back where I just saw okay, I need to not do that many events in a week.
And the worst thing you can do when your voice is hoarse, the worst thing you can do is whisper. That does way more damage than you have any idea. Doctors will say to talk under it, which means to talk lower. It means to breathe into that belly and talk under your regular pitch, which is what I'm doing now, to lessen the vibration of the vocal cords. Did you know, by the way, speaking of vocal cords, that a man's vocal cords are the size of a quarter and a woman's vocal cords are the size of a dime? And every time I do that statistic, it never ceases to amaze me that the bodily instrument with which we communicate to the rest of the world is the size of a quarter or smaller. You got to take care of these vocal cords, people. Got to take care of them.
Awesome. Yeah, and I definitely need to find an ear, nose, and throat because I've never seen one.
You should.
And I'm like, duh. That
And look, when you go to find that ear, nose, and throat person, sometimes you can go to a website, you can find their interests. Right. You want to find one who treats opera singers. You want to find one whose interest is in people who use their voices a lot. Here in Charlotte, North Carolina, I found the one doctor who does that, and he's my ENT, and I wouldn't settle for anything less. So find someone whose interest is in singing or speaking. Yeah. And that's going to be super important for you because they'll understand that for you, this is life and death. This is bread and butter.
Right, exactly.
He knew the last time I had yet another sinus infection and I got a little kind of up, like went all New York on him. All right, Susan, okay. Maximum medical management, he said. Yes, maximum medical management. That's what I want. Yeah, that's what you need.
I love it. And I have a couple friends locally here that do broadcast. And so I'll ask them, I'll start there.
Yeah, good idea.
But that's again, we hear and like, oh, of course I should have that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Susan, where can people find you more online? Where can they, reach out, hear more about the coaching you do? If they're, like I said, I got friends that listen that are in broadcast that I'm sure would love to follow you along and see what you're doing.
Sure. My website is Susan Murphy Vosat. Oh, now what's a Vosat? Voiceover, sound on tape. It's a little broadcast shorthand. But since I've really kind of opened up the professions of people that I coach, ministers, nurses, CFOs, CEOs, people don't know what Vosat is, but it's voiceover, sound on tape, which is a broadcast thing. So it's Susan Murphy Vosat.com, or I'm on LinkedIn, Susan Murphy, and then type in voice coach. There are quite a few Susan Murphys. So you can find me. I'm on Instagram too, under Vosat Better Broadcast Voices. So there are lots of ways to find me, and I hope you do.
Absolutely. And we'll link all of it in the show notes. Makes it super easy for people to connect with you. Before we let you go, we got one more question.
Yeah.
At Unleash the Champ Leadership Podcast, Susan, what does it mean to be a champion to you?
Okay. It means being so authentic, and that can start with your voice. It means being so authentic that you're not going to worry about what the rest of the world thinks about you. You are not going to succumb to ideas that come and go like the wind. You are going to stand in your truth, in your agency, in what you know you can do, you can accomplish, you can be. Standing in that authenticity is being a champ.
That's it. Simple, effective. Susan, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was powerful, as I knew it would be.
An absolute pleasure, Kyle. Have me back anytime.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to the Unleash the Champ Leadership Podcast. Our passion is to talk to successful people and hear all about their journey and what it took to get there. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit up the website at unleashthechamp.com. Find us on Instagram at Kyle J. Sullivan and hit up that Facebook page at Unleash the Champ. Remember, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving.